Welcome everybody. Welcome to part 2 of my Superman Batman retrospective. This episode is going to be on the bad Superman films, which is Superman's 3 and 4. Now, obviously the point could be made that there were other bad Superman movies, you know, that one being one of them, Man of Steel possibly, but there could be arguments that they're also good. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there in the next episode. This time I'm talking about Superman's 3 and 4. They're pretty notorious for being bad, especially the fourth one. But first of all, let me give you my thoughts on the third movie. I rewatched the third movie for this episode. I'd seen it one time. Well, one time like within the past couple years, and it was awful. I was like, "Gosh, this is trash." I watched it again for this video, and I found some things to kind of appreciate about it. Overall, I would still say it's a very big disappointment, especially after Superman's 1 and 2 being so excellent. like before when I watched Superman 3, a couple years ago or whatever, a year ago, I thought it was garbage, and I hadn't seen a Superman movie in a long time, so I was going into it kind of fresh. And this time I had just seen Superman's 1 and 2, so I was kind of coming off the high of those. And when I still had those fresh in my mind, and I saw Superman 3, I could see that there were a lot of the strengths of the first two films did kind of carry over into the third movie. Like I would still say that Christopher Reeve is extremely good in the role. He is still very fun to see as Superman and as Clark Kent. All the scenes with Clark Kent are entertaining and they're funny, and you get wrapped up in his charm, and all this stuff is Superman. He's invincible and he's awesome. So I would say that actually a lot of things about this movie work. Like when the main reason why you see a Superman movie is to see Superman, that part works. All that stuff works. Superman and Clark Kent work. So I would say that much of this movie is sort of a success. But what kills the movie really is the villain sucks, the plot is stupid, and the climax is also really, really stupid. So anything that has to do with the plot is not very good. It's very weak. And then the last 20-30 minutes of the movie is pretty bad too. So you walk out of the theater greatly disappointed. But there are things that are okay. Like Richard Pryor, I actually kind of like him in this movie. Richard Pryor, classic comedian, one of the greatest of all time. He's really silly, and it's kind of strange that he's even in this movie. But I guess he's able to kind of pull it off. I don't know. Because everyone knows his shtick in here. Like he's an idiot, but then in his stupidity, he's kind of able to accidentally create some super intelligent computers. And he's an idiot, and because of that, he's a genius. Basically, that's the joke. And it is sort of funny. I would have rather have had that be its own movie instead of a subplot to a Superman movie. And you could have had Richard Pryor play it. It would have been hilarious. Or get you think of a Woody Allen sort of actor playing a role like that. So I don't totally hate Richard Pryor in this movie. He has his funny bits, and I don't know. That's really all there is kind of to say about this movie. It inspires the least amount of feelings, because like I said, there are some good things. But there's just a lot of miscalculations that the movie makes. It sets up a really interesting tone, I guess, in the opening sequence, where there's all those gags where one mistake leads into another, and Superman's got to fix all this stuff real quick. that's it's very Richard Lestian. Richard Lesterian. If you're familiar at all with Richard Lester's films, it's very much his style, and I don't feel like it's totally out of place in a Superman movie. You know, the movie has an interesting tone, and it kind of works a little bit, and you know, people were just like, oh yeah, Richard Donner, he's the man, and once Richard Lester stepped in, that's when the whole thing went sour, and that may be true. I mean, once he stepped in, the series went downhill, but I wouldn't say it's totally because of him. Like, I think he could have made a really good Superman movie, and there is a good Superman movie somewhere in the mess of this third film. So, you know, take it out what you will. Maybe you disagree, maybe you don't think a lot of that stuff works. I personally don't mind it. For me, the real flaws is the villain sucks. You know, you really miss Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and it's also pretty stupid that Margot Kidder is not in the movie. Well, technically she is in the movie, but you know, she leaves in the beginning and then she comes back later, which is totally out of character for her. She would never go on vacation when there's crazy stuff going down. I mean, Lois Lane is the character, sure. She's so dedicated to her job that, you know, she would never take any personal time. But anyway, Superman 3, not the worst movie there is. Definitely, I wouldn't say it's a good one. I also wouldn't say it's terrible either. I mean, would I recommend Superman 3? No, not really. I don't think I would. It's not really worth watching. You know, it's not really good enough for it to be good, and it's not really bad enough for it to be bad. or bad enough for it to be good, I should say, which I think is a good segue into Superman 4, which is one of the worst movies possibly of all time, arguably the worst comic book movie ever made. And it is so bad, it's a pretty good time. I do recommend watching Superman 4. I mean, I have a poster for it, obviously. I'm a big fan of it. It is so trashy that you are just going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy pretty much every single second of it because, you know, we're kind of like Superman 3 where I was just like, oh, it's not a bad movie, but they made some big miscalculations that overall makes it a disappointment. There's like nothing redeeming about this movie. That I really can't think of a single good thing. I mean, except maybe you could say, oh, it's cool the cast is back. You know, Gene Hackman's back as Lex Luthor. You know, Margot Kidder's back as Lois Lane. Let's see, Meryl Hemingway has a big role in the movie. I'm trying to think of something else to say positive about the movie that has nothing to do with the cast. Jim Broadbent's in the movie. I don't think he has any dialogue, but he's there. Something good to say. Something good to say about it. Okay. Oh, I know something good to say. The director has a badass name. His name is Sidney J. Furie. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks that that's a cool name. I think that's a pretty sweet name. Sidney J. Furie. He's the guy who directed those... I forget the title. They're like Air Force movies or something like that. Like, I want to call it Pilot Wings, but I know that's a video game. He's the guy who made no memorable movie. He's the guy whose only memorable movie is the Shit Show. But he's got a cool name. I mean, he's got a really cool name. His last name is Fury. It's not F-U-R-Y. It's F-U-R-I-E. So it's derivative, but it's like, still, his name is Fury. That's pretty cool. But Superman 4 is a really, really good time. Because everything about it is so terrible. You know, I mean, like Superman 1 is like, you know, it's this epic movie. Like, I mean, it has cheesy special effects because obviously they haven't dated very well, blah, blah, blah. But this movie didn't even have, like, impressive effects for its time. Like, this movie was garbage right off the bat. It opens up in space and you get this really awkward, like, rear projection, like, or I guess maybe green screen sort of thing of Superman. And they reuse that same little about a couple dozen times throughout this movie. Like, the villain, like the villains, you get that, like, I forget what they call him in the movie. Basically the bad Superman. You know, I guess he's Kryptonian or something, and you know, he's the villain that Superman fights on the moon and goes up into, you know, fights him in space and fights him on the planet. Like, I guess you could say that that's kind of a very ambitious set piece to have a single fight take place on Earth, in space, on the moon, and back again, and all over the place. But it is so poorly constructed and so poorly edited. For example, they're on the planet, they're on Earth, and they're fighting, and then one of them takes off, and then one of them takes off after that person. And right after they take off, the very next shot is them in space. Like, I get they're fast. Like, I get that they're as fast as a speeding bullet or whatever. But when you see Superman, you see the anti-Superman flying around, like, they're not usually flying as fast as a speeding bullet. Like, you get their takeoff, and then the very next moment they're in space. Like, you couldn't have a shot in between that of them going through the sky just to kind of flow from one to the next. Like, it's like, no, it's like, it'd be like as if I jumped out of the frame, and then the very next shot you saw of me, I was just in space all of a sudden. It's like, it doesn't even work as like a jump cut, you know? Cause at least like with a jump cut, like you kind of like there's gotta be like a certain energy to it. So like the images and the story still flows in such a way. So like, even though one person's walking here and then it cuts and suddenly they're here, like you can still, like, you don't need that in between. Here you really needed that in between because it literally just feels like they're freaking teleporting from place to place. And let that just kind of be an example for how this whole movie feels. It's so clunkily made, so clunkily edited. You know, all the effects are terrible. The performances are terrible. Like, not even Christopher Reeve is enjoyable to watch in this movie. You at the very least you would expect like some great scenes between Christopher Reeve and Lois Lane. You know, and how they, you know, their chemistry and how they bounce off of each other. Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder. I don't know why I used an actor's name and then the character's name, but anyway. You would expect some of that. You would expect that it'd at least be fun to watch Gene Hackman do the whole Lex Luthor thing, but it's not. I guess maybe another good thing I could mention is this movie is only 90 minutes. Thank God. If this movie was 2 to 2.5 hours like the other movies were, this would be an agonizing experience. It wouldn't even be so bad it's good kind of thing. It would just be like, please end this movie now. You know, show some mercy kind of thing. It's a major letdown. Like, there's nothing to even appreciate. Like Superman 3 like had the whole Christopher Reeve battle with himself. You know, the good Clark and the bad Clark. And it's like he's able to kind of like externalize his personal demons and stuff, and he's able to fight them off. Like, that's a really cool scene. That's a really great idea. There's nothing remotely on that level in this fourth movie. You got nuclear war themes, but they don't really do much with it. Superman rids the planet of the missiles, and then the rest of the movie has nothing to do with anything like that. I don't know. I mean, this movie's notorious for having a pretty kind of rocky production. You know, the people that were producing it promised the production the next amount of money, but they only gave them like half of what they promised, so they had to kind of work with what they had. So you kind of want to like forgive them for a little bit, maybe throw them a bone. But that really doesn't change the fact that the movie, the finished product was just terrible. truly terrible. I don't know. Excuse me. Like, you know, Spider-Man 3 suffered, I mean, Superman 3, excuse me, suffered from kind of the curse of the threes, how a lot of the time the third movie in a trilogy of movies isn't very good. Like Spider-Man 3, which I slipped up and said before, or Alien 3. You know, a lot of people feel Godfather 3 isn't as good as 1 and 2. So, you know, I don't know. Movies garbage, but it's a lot of fun. It's a good set of garbage. I highly recommend you watching the fourth movie. Maybe skip the third one. I mean, it's not like, I mean, 3 and 4 isn't like 1 and 2 where they're basically one big movie where you have to see the first one to go into the second one. 3 and 4 are their own, you know, sustained movie, or like kind of like their own self-sustained stories and stuff. So you can skip 3. You can just skip it. I mean, even if you're like a huge Richard Pryor fan like myself, it's not really worth watching. Richard Pryor's been in other bad movies that are worth watching if you're like a Pryor completionist. But this one, you know, whatever. I mean, maybe watch the scene where he falls off the building. That is pretty worth it. Like that scene is like on the level of like Superman 4 where it's so bad it's freaking awesome. But yeah, anyway, I guess that's really all I'm gonna have to say about those. My next video I'm gonna do, I got one more on Superman before I move on to the Batman films. Then I do all the Batman movies, and then I'll do Batman versus Superman. I got one more I'm gonna do on Superman. It's going to be on the reboot, so it'll be on Superman Returns and Man of Steel. So I hope you enjoyed my video. Of course, please like and subscribe and do all that good stuff for me. You know, I need your guys' support. I need your guys' acceptance. You know, if you have any thoughts on these movies or thoughts on the things I've said, leave them in the comment section. I love to hear feedback from everybody. I've given this person a shout out before, but he's always such a big supporter of mine. I want to give another big shout out to Donald Dietz. You know, he's probably my biggest fan. He's the man. So, so stay tuned for another exciting BretFlix episode where I talk more about Superman. And I don't know, I'll see you guys around.